Good morning, everyone. I'm Ruby Nguyen, as you know. You've probably seen me if you've attended our Epidemiology and Community Health seminars previously. We're glad that you're here for this workshop. Just a quick announcement for next week. Next week, we are honored and privileged to have two of our Epi and EpiCH postdocs speak to us about the milk trial. They've been working with Dr. Demarest. The two who will be speaking next week will be Kelsey Johnson and Emily Nagel. So we're interested in hearing not just about the milk trial itself, but also what our postdocs are up to and how they've been integrated into our division and what steps they've been taking to prepare themselves for their next career move. So we're very excited to have them. But for today, I'm very excited to introduce both Lisa Harnack and Jan Fransen. Welcome to this research workshop that will help you understand the value in managing your online scholarly presence and orient you to key resources and steps that you need to take to ensure your research is fully and accurately represented online. Lisa Harnack is a professor in our division, and she will kick off the workshop with a testimonial by sharing the ways the work she has done and work she's done to manage her own online presence and how that's paid off. Then Jan Fransen, the services lead for the University Library's RIM services or RIM services, and Shonda Hunt, public health librarian and data curation specialist, will dig into sharing resources and explaining your or our collective role in ensuring these resources are fully and accurately reflecting our research. So welcome both Lisa and Jan.
Thank you. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here. Actually, we will not have Shonda Hunt joining us. She wasn't able to join us today, so it'll just be Jan and I. And we're actually going to do a little back and forth. I'll be kind of testimonial. Jan will talk about how to do some of this. So, just a little bit more about Jan is that an interesting, she has her master's in library information sciences and a bachelor's from the University of Minnesota in aerospace engineering and also communications. So a long time U of M person. So what we're going to do today is we're going to actually start with a quick Zoom poll to see kind of where you're all at with managing your online presence so that we know where we might want to focus more our discussion on. And then we'll get into talking about like the why you want to spend your time making sure your scholarly presence is, you know, accurately and fully represented. And so I'm kind of a testimonial to that. And I'm where I'm at thanks to Jan, who she knows how to do this, and she's kind of I've had a lot of aha moments through Jan about how important this is and how to do this. And we'll have Q&A at the end. If you have questions as we go along, please type them into the chat box so that they don't kind of get lost. And when we get to the Q&A time, they're handy right there, ready to talk through. So we'll just go started then. So before I have Jeff launch the poll, I just want to say that part of the Zoom poll is about U of M experts. And I'm showing a picture of my U of M experts page here, just so, actually it's experts at Minnesota is what it's called, just so that you know what we're talking about here. This is experts at Minnesota, and you may or may not know that you've got an experts at Minnesota page if you're a faculty member, and well, you'll learn more about pre and postdocs, you know, others at the universities who may have this page. And then there's also a question about the Health Sciences Library offers a policy and news media impact service report. And so there's a question about that. So just triggering your memory about what those things are as these questions are asked in the poll. So Jeff, go ahead and launch that poll. And Jeff, just let me know when we're, close to having everybody done.
We are currently at 75% of people responding.
Okay, we'll give a little more time here. All right, where are we at now, Jeff?
We're at 80% and kind of holding there. I think we might, unless anybody's just rush, we'll give you 10 more seconds to hurry up and submit your answer if you're going to submit an answer, but then I think we can wrap it up. All right, I'll close it here and you can see the results.
Great. Okay. So it looks like we've got a healthy number of people who don't use experts at Minnesota for very many reasons, although to learn about colleagues' research is the most commonly used here. And then most of you, you're not updating your okay, so Jan, we have some topics to cover here. You're not updating or making corrections to your profile. Yay, most people have an Orcid ID. And most of you have not used the Policy and News Media Impacts Report Service. So great, thank you for taking the time to complete this poll. This is really helpful to us in knowing where we might want to spend more versus less time. So let's get rolling. So I'm going to start with the testimonial with a little fun bit here, which is that Jan and I have known each other for a long time as friends. Our sons are good friends, and they were in elementary school, they became good friends. And so Jan and I started hanging out together with our boys, and here they are at the Renaissance Festival eating turkey legs, and Jan and I are like wandering around with them. And we started chatting and learning that we had some things in common. One of the things we have in common is we're both from farms in Minnesota. So we grew up on farms. And so if we break into like really heavy Minnesota accents as we interact here today, don't you know that's why?
Oh, that could happen, yeah.
And the other thing is that we learned we both work at the University of Minnesota, Jan, in with the libraries. And I'd always thought of the libraries as being a resource for, like, you need a journal article, you need a book, that's what you go to the libraries for. I'm not realizing that the library has these other services that are useful for us researchers. And one of those resources is experts at Minnesota. You maybe probably have heard about it. It looks like most of you have not really interfaced with it very much. So it's there, and let me tell you why it's something you should care about and ways you can be using it that you're not using it. It's a super useful tool in a number of ways. One is that at the bottom of your experts page, it lists your projects and grants and your research outputs. And let's walk through each of those, what's encompassed there and how that data is populated. So if you click on your research outputs, it lists grants for which you are or have been PI or co-PI at the University of Minnesota. At this point, it's externally funded grants, not internally funded grants. And this is really amazing because when you're updating your CV or completing your annual reviews or any of your promotion documents and stuff, and you've got to fill in all these details about grants, like the grant title, the funding period, the source of funding, it's a convenient way to like, oh, here it all is. I don't have to dig through my emails and find NOGAs and email the PI if I'm a co-investigator to get this information from them. But this data does require, I'm going to let Jan explain where this data comes from and what you might need to do to make sure it's accurate.
Okay, so yeah, we get whatever we can from internal sources. So I'm hoping when a lot of you said that you hadn't requested any changes to your profile, it's because it already looked awesome. You've already looked at it. And that's great. Sometimes it doesn't though. And one of those places where you might want to review and make sure of what's there is to look at the projects. We get whatever we can from SPA, from the Sponsored Projects Administration, from the eGEM system. And the problem with that, there's a lot of good things about that, but one of the problems with that is the data as it was typed in there wasn't really meant for public display. So we see weird truncated titles and descriptions that may not really match what you would think of if you think about that project. You can edit those. For other big changes, like you're not seeing one of your projects because, I don't know, you were added later or something like that, that you might have to go through SPA to get the change made, and then it'll be synchronized the next time we bring in data. And as Lisa mentioned, right now we're just using SPA data. We are working on getting some internal grant data as well, specifically from OVPR.
Thanks, Jan. And I will say that for me, I have not had to request any updates. The things were, not best to my knowledge, the titles of the things looked good and the period and all of that. So then the other thing is, your publications, your research outputs, which is basically your publications, are listed here. And it lists, the great thing is that it lists not only articles that are published, that are indexed in PubMed, but also those that might be indexed in other databases, which if you do research, like some of my research is maybe agricultural related, maybe it's indexed in some of those databases and not PubMed. It's more fully capturing my publications. And it's the, you could say to yourself, well, I can just go into PubMed and search for my publications to get, to know which publications I'm, I've authored. But, often then you wind up with publications that someone has your same last name and same initial, and you got to sort through it. And if you, with a little work, a small amount of curation, you can make sure that, this list can really reflect just your publications, and it can be comprehensive. And I'm going to turn it over to Jan to explain how the data's put together.
Thanks, Lisa. So here's another place where we get what we can from other sources so you don't have to enter it yourself. And the source we use where we get data automatically is Scopus, the Scopus database. So if you're not familiar with Scopus, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with PubMed, maybe Web of Science. Scopus is another one of the same. It's very broad. It covers the physical sciences, health sciences, and also social sciences, and they're adding more and more humanities too. So it really is a pretty comprehensive database. It covers peer-reviewed literature though. So if you're publishing in things that are not peer-reviewed, chances are it's not going to be in there. If you're writing book chapters, it may or may not. They're getting better, but it's still not as comprehensive as we want it to be. So it's worth reviewing and making sure everything is there. But if you're a faculty member, we actually pay the vendor to go through and clean up profiles and make sure that even if there are two people with the same name, they get properly separated, disambiguated, so that your stuff is showing up and coming in automatically from Scopus. Glitches that you might see, they're not really glitches, it's just that there's a lot going on behind the scenes here. So occasionally we will have things show up in PubMed before they get to Scopus, and that just has to do with how the data works its way through. You can be pretty assured that if it is in PubMed, it's going to end up on your Experts at Minnesota profile because it will get to Scopus and then to experts automatically for you. You can, if there are other things that you want in your profile that are not in Scopus for whatever reason, you can absolutely import them. We have some resources available to show you how to do that, or you can just email us. I'm not sure if we I'll put our email address in the chat for you. It's expertsmnhelp@umn.edu, and we can help you add that information to your profile.
Thanks, Jan. So I've talked about how great Minnesota expert, I'm reading the name of it, the Experts at Minnesota.
Experts at Minnesota.
Experts at Minnesota is for like knowing bean counting, like for our annual reviews, and just knowing what your publications are and your grants, and for other people too who want to look up that information about you, they can come to this page, right? The other thing that's really helpful is there's a data here that can help you understand the reach and impact of your research. And so that's what I'm going to pivot to talking about now. In research, so I've got it. In research, we often don't know the reach and impact of our research, and that we're missing a feedback loop to know how, is what I'm doing making a difference in the world? I have a cleaning bucket here because I actually like to clean my house. I'm one of those rare people who enjoys cleaning. And I think it's because I see a difference. It's like, I did some work and things are cleaner, things look better. And with our research, we spend years getting the grant and then we carry it out and we publish the findings. I'm like, did it do anything? Did it make a difference in the world? And so we need that feedback loop to keep us going. Is somebody reading and using my research? It's also a feedback loop that maybe sometimes tells us no, people are not reading it or using it. And that's a feedback loop to say, maybe I'm doing research that's not so impactful, or maybe I'm not getting the research published or communicated in a way that people are reading it like they should. So there's a feedback loop there. And then it's, also really helpful for preparing your promotion dossier where you can, quantify your research impact beyond saying you have an impact. There's metrics that can help you quantify that. And applying for research awards as well, as being able to quantify your research reach and impact. So now let's go back to, this is from the research output. And you may or may not have noticed these little colorful graphics on the right-hand side. These are where you can start to learn about your research reach and impact. And we'll walk through these. And I'm going to use a specific paper that I published where I really had wanted this paper to get communicated to the public, to health professionals and to the food industry, because it had implications. Like I worked with School of Public Health Communications to do some work, and I wanted to, these metrics can help me see, was that effort worthwhile? Did it actually, get read by some people and communicated and whatnot? So the PlumX metrics is one measure. That's this, I don't know what to describe this thing, but this little thing here. And if you click on that for your articles, it's going to give you a PlumX metrics report. And I'm going to let Jan explain some key features of what's in this report.
Sure. Well, I'm going to give it a try. There are a lot of things in this report. You saw on the little graphic, which you also see on the upper left-hand corner here, all the different colors. Those are indicating different kinds of impact. So with some of the things that you see here, the citations, those are the things we're used to seeing when we talk about scholarly publications. How many times were you cited by other people who are writing peer-reviewed literature? But then there's and so far there are 6 on this, and I'd like to point out, I think this was published in December, Lisa, am I right on that? So it hasn't been around very long. I guess I could look at the screen and tell that too. It hasn't been around very long. So yes, those citation counts are probably going to grow over time, but Lisa can see the impact a little bit sooner by looking at the captures. Captures it's using the Mendeley reader. So if you use Mendeley to pull in publications that you want to read later on, that's what it's counting there. News mentions, that's going to be the press release and probably other things, places where that got picked up. And then there's social media, like who was tweeting about it. And sometimes it's going to be like the publisher tweeted out each article that was in the new issue or something like that. But then a lot of times, especially in public health, they're going to be picked up and tweeted in other areas that you might not expect. So it's worth taking a look at.
Thanks, Jan. Then there's this other graphic here, the circle, and that's the Ultimatrix metric. And if you click on that, you get another report. And I'm going to let Jan explain it.
Sure. And again, it covers pretty similar stuff. Again, the crazy colors that they have. I love when I see a really colorful one like this. And Lisa, I'm looking at this live in Experts at Minnesota right now, and that 107 is now 144. So I'm not sure when you took that screenshot, but these things continue to grow. And we decided to err on the side of having more information rather than less, even though there's some overlap, because they do also cover some different things. I believe in Altmetric, for example, there are videos. If it's been cited in a video, you maybe see a little bit more blogs, and it sometimes does pick up different news sources than PlumX does. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. I also like that it has that, I'm not sure really how useful it is, but depending on your work, that geographic map can be interesting too, to see where besides the US, is your work being picked up and talked about.
Yeah, and I just did a media interview with The Guardian in the UK, so I'm probably going to see a little light up in Europe when it's published. So,
yeah, I'm looking at it right now, Lisa, and yes, you did.
So, there another thing that you can click on, and this is more of a academic metric here versus media coverage and whatnot, is you can view your Scopus profile. It's right below your picture, which you should. If you start maintaining your expert's profile, you can put your picture in there. You might right now have no picture, and that's because that's your job to put your photo in there. And anyway, so if you view the Scopus profile, this is where we get to those commonly used metrics of, academic, academia, this H index and citations. And I'm again going to turn this over to Jan to explain.
Sure. So one of the things that both Scopus and Web of Science do this, they do a lot of work with citation information, with the data that they can get from citations. So and the other thing they do is they put together author profiles. That's something that PubMed does not do. So as Lisa said, you can search your name and you'll get you and then anybody else with the similar name. Often it's last name, first initial, in fact. So it's going to be more than is actually your work. This is Lisa's profile as it was on this day, showing the trends over time, showing the number of times that she's been cited. She can click there and see who has been citing her, kind of the path over time. A couple of other things that you can see the titles here below that chart. You can see a couple of things that you could also click on and take a look at. If you want to take a look at the co-authors for this individual, they are listed here, and then you can click over and look at their profiles. And I find the topics, and you can see in the most contributed topics 2016 to 2020, that can be interesting too, to look and see, okay, where is this person contributing? Where are they writing? You can click through then and see more information on other people who are writing on the same topic. It's actually a similar feature in Experts at Minnesota that I think we'll talk about in a couple of minutes too. The last item you see there, the 5 awarded grants, that's something that they're just starting to build now. They're trying to grab any information they can from especially federal grants, the NIH, NSF, any federal grant, grabbing the information and matching up the people with the grant and putting that on their profile as well. That's super useful later on when we want to match up grant with publication in order to show the impact when you have to report back to the funder about what came out of that grant.
Thanks, Jan. And I just learned something new because I didn't know that was being built out. That'll be cool. Yeah, just building on, if you click to part of what Jan said, if you click on a specific publication, and so this is that nutrient composition of plant-based meats, that paper that I'm using as an example. 6 people have cited it so far. And if I was curious about like who is citing it, you can actually see that from the Scopus. I can click and see exactly who has cited it, which gives me a feedback loop, or maybe figuring out, wow, who else is working in this area right now, which is an emerging area of research. And that might help me connect with collaborators outside my institution, who are working in this area.
Also, grape flour, what? I learned something new every day too.
Yeah, these products are very interesting formulations, I will tell you. Of course, as we talk about the H index, last month we had Dr. Brittany Williams talk on this is just one metric, and it provides an incomplete metric of the impact of your research, and it suffers from biases. And that I think that seminar was recorded. If you couldn't attend it, it's really great to listen to. So it's an imperfect measure, but of course it is being used. So you need to know about H index and how to access your H index. And I'm going to now talk about another way of looking at the impact of your research beyond H-index and how much it's cited in the media and whatnot, is looking at the extent to which it's used in policy documents, in different government reports, used in practice, guiding practice policies, public health practice. And the U of M library offers this service, the Health Sciences Library. You just go online and you can request a report to find out about your impact in this way for different areas of your research. So I guess in August, I requested a report on a couple areas of my research. And within a couple weeks, they prepared a report that included an executive summary and then details about every instance where my work had been cited in a government report or document, or non-governmental organizations as well, different reports. And so it's, and this is really, this is the kind of stuff that can help you keep going when you sometimes wonder if your research is being used, is you see, yes, somebody, it's not only being read by other researchers, but it's actually being used by policymakers. And in my instance, it was used in a code of federal regulation and New York City Health Care Code to justify, as rationale for some policies that were enacted. So this is an amazing report to request. I think it can be really, really, these two things between your H-index and requesting this report can be very helpful in preparing your promotion dossiers, especially as you go from associate to full, to help you quantify and provide concrete examples of the ways in which your research has contributed. So I can't say enough about the great things about being able to get this report from the library. It's amazing. Jan, did you have anything to add to that, what I said?
I will only add that my colleagues are awesome. So, yes, this is a great report to request. If you thought about how you would go about doing this for yourself, it's a significant amount of work, but my colleagues have done it enough times. They've developed a practice where, as Lisa said, of course, it's going to depend on their workflow, but a couple of days and they've got something for you. So it might take longer. Don't wait till the last minute.
Yes, yeah. I think they say, allow a couple of weeks. Another way that experts at Minnesota is useful is finding collaborators within the university. Before I realized that they could be used for this purpose, my strategy was, if I needed somebody like, oh, I need somebody from computer science, I go to the computer science and engineering webpage, I look at the faculty list and I just click through one by one, reading the faculty bios to find somebody who's working in my area. And with experts at Minnesota, I can enter a search term, and this is a real example. I needed someone to collaborate on food marketing. And I can search, and wow, here I see at the University of Minnesota people who work in that area. And I actually am collaborating with Joe Redden for the last couple of years. I located him. Imagine if Joe had told me, oh, Lisa, I'm too busy. I don't have time to work with you. Obviously, I had to ask him for some other ideas of who to talk to, but I could also actually use experts at Minnesota to find people at the university who are doing related work by clicking on his profile and asking to see similar profiles. And so then that kind of gives me some more leads if I strike out with, the first person I reach out to.
I'm just going to add a couple things, Lisa. If you're looking for it, it's not on the screenshot, but way over on the far right is where you see that similar profiles tab. This right here, this is a really good reason to keep your own profile looking current and reflecting what it is you actually do. It's just doing text analysis. It's using the titles and the abstracts from your publications to figure out if you're similar to somebody else. So try to make sure those are accurate. Make sure you've got abstracts, not just titles. Probably not going to be a problem for any of you since most of the data will come from Scopus and you'll have that. But this is, we all have a bunch of different profiles and different systems, and it can be, it's not very compelling to say, oh, look, you have another pretty page to maintain. But it can be pretty compelling when you think of it in terms of, I want people to find me. So it's up to you to make sure that you are findable. And that's what experts can do for you internally and to the outside world as well.
Great. Now, moving sort of outside the University of Minnesota and experts at Minnesota is, if you say Google your name, and it's a good way to find out, what your scholarly presence looks like and how, someone outside the University of Minnesota might find you and learn about you. For me, and I think for many of you, you'd find the School of Public Health, the directory will show up there, and also experts at Minnesota is going to show up probably towards the top of your search results. Google Scholar tries to create a profile for you, and so likely you'll also pop up with the Google Scholar link. And the information there that's found there may not be very accurate because Google Scholar is not spending time curating that data. They're just using machine learning to, some algorithm to try and accrue a list of your publications and whatnot. But you can actually authenticate and curate your Google Scholar profile. And so I actually finally did that. It's no fun doing these things, but actually this was not very hard. It was surprisingly easy. So I could put in a picture that I want, and now I know how I can update it. And I'm going to let Jan talk about Google Scholar a little bit, and in particular, why the H index for Google Scholar provides an H index for you and why it might be different than what Scopus provides.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions that I get all the time. One is, why is my Google Scholar H index so much higher than my Experts at Minnesota one or my Scopus one? And the other is, why don't you people just use Google Scholar? Because it is so very comprehensive. I'll answer the second question first, because it's Google and they don't give us the rights to harvest information from Google Scholar. They have rights with each publisher to do what they do. They cannot pass them on to us. So no, we can't just use Google Scholar. Also, Google Scholar does not have information about our institutional hierarchy and how we're all related to each other and what colleges we're in and all of that. So those are kind of the whys there. The other question is about H index and also just number of publications. Why is my H index so much higher in Google Scholar? And this does happen a lot. And it's just because of the universe of things that the Google Scholar is considering when calculating that H index. In Scopus and in Web of Science, they are looking at each journal that they allow into their system and making sure that it's peer-reviewed, making sure that it's of high quality. A journal usually has to be around for a couple of years before it will even be considered for inclusion in those platforms, because journals pop up all the time and they want to make sure they're actually including good stuff. Google Scholar does not have that same kind of way of getting in. It's basically they get something from a publisher, they add it. They get something from an institutional repository, they add it. So the things that are going to be counted for you when it looks for citations to your work are going to be not just other peer-reviewed papers and not just policy documents, but also things like posters by undergraduate students, papers by a wide range of people. That can be great. It can show you some of that impact that Lisa was talking about that doesn't show up in the scholarly literature. On the other hand, it can inflate it to the point where it's not useful anymore. So if you are considering what you want to use, it's totally, I think, fine to include your Google H index, your Google Scholar H index, but say that's what it is. Say what your source is for your H index, and perhaps give a reason. This is why I'm including this one, because it counts all these other things that are relevant for my work, where not all of my impact is captured in scholarly work. So hopefully that helps. Anything I missed there, Lisa?
I wonder if I've noticed, I think Google Scholar sometimes misattributes work to me that's not mine. And that could also drive up my index in kind of a really bad way, that is.
Yeah, that can certainly happen. And that's another good reason to claim your profile in Google Scholar. We have, and you'll see in a couple of minutes, I have some resources. We have some resources in the libraries that can tell you step by step how to do that. You can then disclaim particular items that are not yours, and also, of course, pull in things that it did not properly identify as yours.
Perfect. All right. And then this pivots us to, you know, talking about the library resources to help you, you know, do these things that we've been talking about to manage your online presence. And I'm going to let Jan take it from here.
Okay, so we have this thing called the Library or the Research Impact Challenge on our website. We actually got it from another library. I think it was at University of Michigan. One of their librarians came up with this, and we liked it so much that we just adapted it for ours. It is 10 days of activities. They vary in length about what you will do on each day, but they are little bites of things that you can do to take the steps towards making sure your profile looks the way you want it to look, to make sure things get associated with you without you having to do a lot of work, and also to walk you through sort of the thought process of what things should I be looking at, considering the kind of work that I do. I'll put a link to this in the chat as well, or you can probably just search for Research Impact Challenge on our website. The 10 days start out, I'm not going to walk through them all, but I'm going to mention a couple. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Orcid in just a second and tell you more about what is there. We do have a day 2 is claim your Google Scholar profile, as we've just talked about. Thinking about sharing your work in a digital repository, such as the university's digital repository, the UDC, or something that's more disciplinary in nature. The social media audit, I think, is really useful to just get you to think about, okay, is Twitter useful for me? Okay, well, think about that. Is LinkedIn, you know, and then you have a better idea of which things you really need to focus on. And there are more. So next slide, please, Lisa. I want to talk a little bit more about Orcid. I was really pleased to see in the poll that the majority of you do have an Orcid ID. For those of you who may not, just the quick story is it's a digital persistent identifier, DPI, and I'm using that particular abbreviation for a reason. We often call it a PID, a persistent identifier, just a PID. It's like a DOI for people. And it's really important for name disambiguation. If you have a common name, or not even common, if somebody else shares your name or even your last name and first initial, if you've changed your name over time or you think you might in the future, that Orcid ID stays constant. So it can be related to any of your work that's related to research, whether it's publications or grants or something else. Next slide, please. Here's something that came out just in January. So there's a White House memorandum that, for complicated reasons, says people should use personal identifiers. Next slide, please. And this is probably completely unreadable, but somewhere in here in this report that came out, it says people should use, where does it say? Sorry, I'm reading it on my own screen because I can't see that one. People should use persistent identifiers, DPIs. It doesn't say people should use Orcid IDs, but we all know that's what they mean. We have already been seeing many publishers requesting Orcid IDs when you submit something, and we're seeing more and more grant proposals are also requesting or often requiring an Orcid ID. So that may be why you got one yourself. A publisher asked for it. But in general, it's good for them. It's good for the funders. It's good for the publishers. It's good for the libraries. And it's really good for you, because once you do this is infrastructure behind the scenes where everything is going to be kept in one place. You don't have to ever look at your Orcid profile. There is a public profile that will get built. You don't even need to make it public if you don't want to. What it's really for is to have one place where everything stays together. As long as you're at the University of Minnesota, Experts at Minnesota does that too. But if you move to a different institution, all bets are off. So if you have an Orcid ID and if you link that to your Experts at Minnesota account, and again, we have steps on how to do that, it will automatically, every time you add something to your Experts profile, it'll automatically send it to Orcid. It's nothing you have to maintain separately. It's just everything linked behind the scenes. And I'm going to leave it at that. Anything else I should say about Orcid, Lisa?
No, but I was just realizing that I forgot to have you mention who has an experts at Minnesota profile and postdocs and pre-docs?
I was thinking about that too. So yeah, let's talk for a second about the scope of experts at Minnesota. So we have gone very wide with our research information management system, which is what RIM stands for, by the way. It is not just faculty. All faculty are included. Anybody with a research title is like researcher 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are included. Their postdocs are included. Graduate fellows. And also there are a lot of people who have experts profiles who may not know it because their profile is not public. We have any graduate student who has an employment relationship with the university is actually added to experts at Minnesota. If you are curious about whether you have one or not, go ahead and try to log in. experts.umn.edu/admin. I put it in the chat. Or any experts page, just scroll to the bottom, there's a login to Pure link. Pure is the product behind Experts at Minnesota. Click that. If you can log in, there you go, you got a page. And you can choose to make that visible if you like. We like to leave control with the individual. We set a default, so students by default are not visible and can choose to be visible. Faculty by default are visible and can choose to be not. We hope you don't, but you can. So that a lot of staff are also included and not visible, or sometimes visible. I think all our communications professionals are included and visible. We like that because it enforces the idea that, you know what, any individual department or college could choose to take control of all the profiles for their faculty members, which is something else I think Lisa and I were talking about earlier. You could choose as a department, if you've got somebody on staff who is already maintaining a lot of data on behalf of faculty, maybe you want to give them the ability, and we can give them the ability to also handle updates to their Experts at Minnesota profiles, in addition to individuals being able to do it for themselves. An example, Lisa mentioned how you can add photos to your profile. You can add a profile photo. CLA actually did that for all of their faculty. They had the photos. They said, just give us a login, and we did. And a student went through and added all the photos for them. So we have how-to instructions on how to do that. We can give people rights and take them away if they leave and all of that. So if you are interested in that, just ping me, let me know, and I can set you up.
Great, thanks. So I think we're going to pivot to Q&A, and I'm going to start by looking through the chat here. And some of what's in here is some announcements that Ashar put in a note that for faculty, Nita and Shar have a list of Orcid ID and Scopus numbers in Epigram database. So if anyone needs those numbers for themselves, they've got them. Your Orcid ID should also be linked to your NIH ERA Commons ID. And Ruby asked about the photo. So definitely add a photo.
Yeah, and Lisa has that login button, or that, what is it, edit my profile button or something like that. The reason she does is because she's previously logged in on that computer. So once you've logged in once, you'll see that on your own profile.
Great, thank you. I found it really easy to do once you gave us the other website for, I forget what it was called, sorry, but it was outside of the experts page. So that was helpful.
Right, yeah, the experts.umn.edu/admin gets you into the Pure, the back-end product.
Great. So Ruby asked if I have done the challenge, and no, I have not. I've done pieces of the challenge. I want to do the social media challenge part of it because I haven't done that, and I've been wanting to think more about. I have a LinkedIn and a Twitter that I use professionally, and I want to think more about that.
And I just added the link to the Research Impact Challenge to the chat.
Yeah.
But you did have a student or a postdoc do it, right, Lisa?
Yes. Yeah. I'm looking to see if he's on. I don't think he's on.
It's useful for me to get feedback from an actual person.
Yeah, he did it. Let's see if Patrick's on here. He's not. He told me that it went. He did the challenge, and it was great. It wasn't that hard to do, and he was glad he did it. And doing it as a pre-doc or postdoc is a good time to get yourself set up. It's probably less work in the long run if the earlier you do it.
You know, I want to go back quick to that NIH question because it reminded me that we talked about Orcid and making sure that's that you have one. And yeah, you can link that with NIH. I will not remember all the right words, but I think it's in Science CV where you can just import directly from Orcid to fill in your profile. So again, it's infrastructure. It's a good link. It means you don't have to retype stuff. We all like that.
Folks, we do have a question that came to me, and here it is. Are there resources or checklists through UMN libraries for changing your name? And your gender pronouns, by the way, and places to check or update so that your research sites stay linked?
That is such a good question. And I don't off the top of my head have a link for you, but I know some of my colleagues were working on something like that. So I can follow up and get that to you. In fact, I think Shanda was one of the people that was working on it. So for exactly that kind of thing. You can in the university's web pages, your MyU under My Info, you can add your pronouns there. We, however, can't bring those into Experts at Minnesota. Those are private information, and we only bring in information that's public. You can add them yourself in Experts at Minnesota. But therein lies a lot of the problem. You know, we like it when systems all link up for various reasons. When you want to give the individual control of where things show up, that does mean more work for the individual as you make sure that everything gets out to where you want it to be.
Great, and I've made it through all the chat questions. If anyone has any more questions, just unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
Hi, it's David Jacobs. I'm in my profile and trying to add a picture. I don't see where to do it.
Okay, let's see.
David, are you in your profile? Or are you in the that supplemental page?
I'm in the profile and I clicked on edit profile, but there's no place to put a picture.
Yeah, I'm just logging in myself so I can tell you what it is called.
I found it hard to find too, David. It's in that first box. And so in the first box, you'll see these little oblongs. And it's probably the fourth oblong down after the Orcid number.
And I have to say, some of these things are not intuitive and easy to do. And Jan's suggestion that we think about someone in our division being responsible for doing some of these tasks versus each of us spending half an hour trying to figure out how to add your picture, because it's actually not super. Maybe it's easy for some people, but it wasn't easy for me.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think I might have added your picture the first time, Lisa, because you complained to me about it. It is not super obvious. It is not, the screen is not a kind of a WYSIWYG kind of thing, or where what you see is what you get. Can I share my screen? I can show you where it is.
It looks like it only takes a 1 megabyte file also. So the picture I had taken last year,
Yeah.
faculty picture day, would not go on.
So I had that problem too. I just I did a screenshot of a smaller part of my faculty picture.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Or you can actually resize, but it's a whole complicated thing. Another reason why it would be great to have one person do this for all of you, because it is really fast once you know where it is. This is what my page looks like when I'm logged in. If I scroll down here, there is my profile photo, and yeah, you can just add it. You can add file and click it in there to add, with all the limitations everyone has just talked about.
I don't see that page. Can I share my screen and show what I'm seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here it is. Okay, so here I am. I found myself by author search, and this is correct. All this stuff is fine. And I click on edit profile.
Yeah, you're in Scopus right now, not in Experts at Minnesota. So
I see.
yeah. So if you're tabbed to the left of the one you're in right now, up at the top, yeah. And if you scroll down way to the bottom, there'll be a login link at the bottom of the screen.
Way to the bottom.
Way to the bottom, yeah. See where it says
Oh,
login?
login to
over the left?
Pure.
Yeah, Pure is the product that we license that runs Experts in Minnesota. Yep, that is a huge hurdle right there. That's why they added that, edit my profile screen. So at least once you've done it once, it'll always be on your picture. From
Oh,
here,
this
you
will
can
go
edit
into
profile.
Scopus too?
What's that?
That will
No,
go in-
Scopus doesn't support a profile photo.
Oh, it has a picture that says no photo. Oh,
Oh, does it? Well,
yeah,
then
that
the-
was, let's see, where was I just with that? Over here is Scopus. Oh, maybe I don't know. I'm probably talking nonsense. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I think Jan said there's actually an email or a number you can call for assistance too as you get stuck. So definitely use that if you're stuck, because if you get stuck, you don't want to. It's so frustrating to,
So someplace in here is a place for the picture.
Right, yeah.
Profile photos right here.
It's right there. Yep.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and not to be a screen hog. And
Any other questions or comments?
I was going to share, I have faced many hurdles with my name and doing this type of thing, but I was going to give a plug for the staff who support this system being really responsive to helping to remove articles. I have a doppelganger with the same name who works in a very similar area of research at the University of Minnesota. So we have a lot of conflicts with what comes up in my profile. They're a graduate student, but they're publishing. So they've been really helpful. And so I was just going to give a plug to reaching out to the support staff. I just used a chat function in the past and they've resolved issues really quickly.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, we do have a helpline, the expertsmnhelp@umn.edu is somebody has responsibility for it at all times. We only respond during the day and during the week, but you can expect a response pretty quickly if we're on the line. We do have another page that I can link in the chat that has a lot of the things you will want to do in an individual profile. We do send out an email once a year. We send it out in January. So if you check your email, you will find something from Experts in Minnesota in your email in late January that has a lot of links in it for how-tos within Experts in Minnesota.
Great. Any last comments or questions? Jan and I said if we end early, that gives people time to go into their profile and claim, do something, claim your Google Scholar profile or get your Experts at Minnesota profile, get your photo in there and whatnot. So
yes, start walking through those 10 steps. I just shared in the chat the LibGuides link to our Experts Help. That'll have all of the big things that people want to do in their profiles and how to do them. We have step by step if you like, or as Lisa and Abigail have said, email us and we're happy to help you out.
Great. Well, thanks for joining everybody.
I just have a question, maybe for 1 minute discussion. I've been really reluctant to get into social media, and I wonder what your thoughts are about the pros and cons of really getting into it or being very active with it.
Lisa, I'm letting you take that one.
I think everybody's learning and figuring this out. And there's no uniform decision. For me, I found that I'm finding LinkedIn very useful, and I'm connecting with all of my students on there so that I can share job postings and that sort of thing and keep tabs on what they're doing. I'm having a harder time figuring out, like, say, Twitter or TikTok or other things, and I'll let other people talk on that. Who I think, Ruby, you're using Twitter very well. So why don't you share? Oops,
You're on mute.
I don't think I am. I think Rachel Whittam does a fabulous job in creating conversations and polls on Twitter. So I invite Rachel if she's able to speak up now. But I do a lot of one-way communication on Twitter. So here's information, here's a new publication, here's seminar stuff. But I wish I could cultivate more discussion on Twitter.
No, I've felt as though my profile is big enough. Why do I need more? I haven't had trouble communicating with people, but the world is changing, and I'm old, and I'm maybe not wanting to change with it. So it's I think that this seminar was really useful in just bringing some of those points out and opening up this kind of discussion. I could change. I'm reluctant, but I could.
So Rachel, I would like you to share, if you're willing to share your experience on Twitter.
Sure. Twitter is the only social media platform that I know decently well, and it's a bit of a long story. I will say that it's not for everyone. It sort of requires a certain type of personality. And I'll also say that the way to sort of optimally use Twitter professionally as an academic is actually not what you think. I think a lot of people approach it thinking about it as a way to broadcast their research and what they're doing. And that's actually not the most useful way to use it. The most useful way to use it is to sort of engage in conversations with people, almost in a way that you might engage with people at a conference, but you're not at a conference. So, but it's a long story, and there are a lot of downsides of Twitter and a lot of hazards of Twitter. And like I said, I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone. It sort of is a weird space in a lot of ways.
I think we need a whole separate seminar on social media and academia. It would be really great to hear how people are figuring out how to use it, and some of the things to watch out for that can be, little.
I think one of the most important topics, and I actually brought this up, I guess it was last week with, and you can tell I'm getting old, the speaker, our former student who's now at NIH. There's so much misinformation, and how can we as faculty in public health contribute to more accurate and true information and to uncovering false information? And I just have a feeling that we're kind of sticking our toes in that water with this kind of a conversation.
Great. Well, I think we will wrap it up here. And thanks so much. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.